Yeah, she there. I'm going to call her. Yeah. But you can dispatch. She was returned dispatch. And so she took some shelter dogs and the dispatch center to help do just kind of like therapy, petting dogs. Because the only one who was dispatched that day.
All the way down.
I know, I turned that one really quick.
Which one?
Oh, it's everyone.
Of course. Yeah, but which fire truck are we talking here? We got the original.
Oh, no, hers? And she's walking over here.
She's in print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were no dogs.
Right.
There were like
30 seconds because I just had seen this and then realized that I didn't hear it.
And then I get talking that little loud.
Yeah.
Like, well, you see that thing?
Yeah.
All of that.
Okay, let's go. Good evening and welcome to the San Francisco Commission of Animal Welfare and Control meeting for Thursday, August 15th, 2019. Can we do this roll call, please?
Yes, this is Commissioner Irani. Anne-Marie Fortier,
She's absent.
Sherry O'Neill, present. Fanny Rosenberg,
She's absent.
Russell Tanofsky,
Present.
Jane Tobin,
Present?
Brian Van Horn,
Present.
Rachel Reese,
She's absent.
Lisa Wayne,
She's absent.
Brian Crockett,
He's absent. Okay, I guess it's me. General public comment. Members of the public may address the commission with comments or recommendations on items with the commission's jurisdiction other than the items on the agenda at the beginning or at the end of the meeting, but not both. Are there any public comments about things that are not on the agenda today?
Yes, Nadine May, this is not on the agenda, but I wanted to bring up a very important fact. I just read an article in the Chronicle about the new Point Reyes management plan, which will be really an awful thing for the Tule Lake and for the environment at Point Reyes Natural Seashore. So I want to encourage everybody, they're looking for public comment, so I want to encourage everybody, go to the Chronicle, look for Point Reyes management plan, and please comment on it before September. That's why I wanted to bring it up at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public? Oh, one more.
I'm Dr. Mark Lemire. I spoke last month about these pet camp ads that were going in the adoption packets for all animals that were adopted at ACC. I hope you guys still have the packets I dropped off last time, because 2 days after I spoke to you about it, these ads stopped going into the packets. About a week later, I ran into Judy, who is in charge of the front office at ACC, and I said to her something about these ads no longer going into the packets, and she said, that's my department, and she didn't know anything about it. She said she didn't pack the packets themselves, but somebody under her control is stuffing the envelopes, and somebody told them not to put these in the packets any longer. Apparently this has been going on since 2002. It's almost 20 years of free advertising with the implied consent of the city, which I believe is called conflict of interest. Can I give this to be put on the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, of course.
I mean, Pet Camp has been benefiting financially by this for 20 years. And Pet Camp is also owned by Virginia and her husband. Her husband's a lawyer, should know better. I guess I don't have a lot more to say, except it's sort of like our very own little Donald Trump administration over there at ACC. Well, I guess I should say one more thing. Last month, I heard somebody say something about a $20 million shelter. Well, I think the number now is 63 or 64 million. And after they fund it and pay back the debt, it's going to be $100 million. So whoever brought up that $20 million number should probably read the paper. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, moving on to item number 3, the approval of the draft minute from the July 2019 meeting. Are there any issues, discussion, problems with them, the notes?
Motion to approve?
Approve. I'll say aye, I guess.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll approve those. Moving on to item number 4, the chairperson and commissioners' reports. Commissioners' report regarding recent activities in the community involving animal issues that have been discussed by the commission in the past. I have one very kind of brief thing. I guess it's regarding the commissioners who are up for their term is up. I think that's just Jane and I right now here. And I already spoke to Jane about it, but we'll put it on the public record. The Rules Committee is meeting on Monday, the 9th of September at 10 a.m. in room 263. That is when the people who have applied for the open positions on the committee will have the hearing before the Rules Committee. If there's any questions, you can contact Victor Young, who's the clerk of the committee. The Rules Committee at victor.young@sfgov.org. The 3 members of the Rules Committee now are Supervisors Ronan, Walton, and Marr. That is really all the update on that. Does any other commissioners have any updates on any items? Seeing none, we will move on to old business. The SF-SPCA, SF-ACC Feral Cat Program changes. This is an ongoing discussion item that we have here. Recently, SF-SPCA and SF Animal Care and Control in partnership modified a long-standing feral cat program. Whereas in the past, mother cats and kittens less than 2 months old were captured from the wild, brought to the shelter, then returned to the wild. Mother cats or adopted kittens, the new policy is to allow mothers and kittens to stay in the wild until the kittens are weaned. Virginia Donohue, from the Director of the Animal Care and Control, will have a presentation. So I guess we'll go on to you.
Thank you to sort of get this out of the way to address the previous comment. Pet Camp has over the years had ads that they've paid for through Friend ACC that appear in adoption packets. So those are open to other companies as well. Pet Camp just happens to have co-op service. Okay, let's go on to cats and stats. This is Pet Corp.
Yes.
Okay. So, this is a cat's path through San Francisco Animal Care and Control. So we're gonna talk about intake. We're not gonna talk much about hold period, since that's really pretty in the weeds. We'll talk a little bit about what happens in the evaluation stage, and then next steps. So our total cat intake last year was 3,078. So how did they come in? Custody. So those are cats that come in because their people are in some sort of trouble. Either they've been evicted, victim of a fire, domestic violence, incarcerated, hospitalized. 60 come in because the owner has requested humane euthanasia. Our veterinary team evaluates these cats before it goes ahead and does the euthanasia. 339 are dead on arrival, meaning that they were picked up dead in the street or they died before they are through processing. 609 are owned. So the owner surrendered, or there's a chip in it which makes us say, okay, this is an owned or was owned at some time. Over 2,000 of them are stray. So that's the population we're looking at coming in. So of those, well, the subset of the 2,000, how many go into foster? So 2 fiscal years ago it was 809 cats, last fiscal year was 926. So the fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. All right, so when they come in, they're evaluated. While they're in the shelter, they get veterinary care, they're cared for by the animal care attendants, and they're cared for by our volunteer population that works in the shelter. So these are not the foster cats or the foster homes, these are the volunteers in the shelter. Obviously, cats that are in foster are cared for by the foster volunteers, most of whom are with Tony's Kitty Rescue. So when they're in the shelter, how do we assess what we're doing? Well, we're looking at capacity for care, which means when we look at the situation holistically, are we meeting the needs of every animal who's been admitted to the shelter, regardless of how they came in, what their age is, what their health is, what their personality is. So how do we know if we're meeting those needs? This is the set of standards we use. Developed by the Association of Shelter Veterinarians, and this is the tool we use to tell us about what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing. So one of the key, sorry, this is a really awkward setup for talking to people. So one of the key aspects of looking at capacity for care is considering length of stay. Length of stay is a key indicator both for an individual cat and the entire population of cats. So if you have on average 5 cats a day enter your shelter and each cat stays for 5 days, you've got an average daily population of 25 cats. But let's say your length of stay doubles. So you rise to 10 days. No change in the average intake. Pretty soon, your population, your average population doubles to 50 cats a day. So, longer stay, the more cats in the building. More cats in the building, the more crowded it is. And we care about that for several reasons. First, cats are stressed in the shelter. I think there's pretty much uniform agreement that as much as we try, and as much as some cats do better than other cats, every cat is stressed. And it's in the cat's best interest to get them out of the shelter as soon as possible. The other issue with length of stay is that the longer you're in, the more likely you are to develop negative behavioral traits, the more likely you are to contract a disease, the less likely your chances of being adopted. It's kind of like going into a human hospital. the longer you stay, the more you get stuff you didn't have when you walked in. Because you're surrounded by a lot of other animals who bring in their own diseases. So these studies have looked at how this affects cats' health and behavior. So on the behavior side, the longer they're in, you see a decrease in appetite, decrease in activity, increase in antisocial behavior, and increase in trying to avoid people. On the health side, kittens have 31% greater chance of developing upper respiratory infections after 7 days. That goes up to 84% if you're there for 14 days. In adult cats, the percentages are similar. You're looking at 26% and then 80. Okay, so what do we worry about for the most part? We have two major health stressors in the shelter, ringworm and URI, both of which are extremely contagious. If a cat gets ringworm, it takes 1 month to cure the cat of ringworm. If things are going well and the SPCA ringworm wards are open, they tend to open every Monday, and we can bring the cat over there, we can move the ringworm out of the shelter before the entire shelter gets it. URI, it takes 10 days to clear the cat so that it can go back to availables. So far not this season, but for previous several seasons, we've had major outbreaks of both ringworm and URI, where we've had many, many sick cats in the shelter. So there were some issues raised, I think it was last month, about why kennels are empty. So kennels are empty, one, the kennels were originally single. They have portals cut in them, so they are now doubles. That double size is now considered the minimum amount of space a cat can have. So our fully expanded doubles are meeting the minimum space requirements. We're keeping some of the kennels empty to try and manage the flow in, so we don't have a lot of sick cats. We're trying to minimize their amount of stay in the shelter and get them out to homes faster. From a marketing perspective, if people are walked in and they're overwhelmed with choices, they tend not to get anything. They tend to walk back out. So what are we doing to try and alleviate this? So our biggest influx is, of course, during kitten season, which runs from late spring to late fall. So what we used to do was the kitten would hit the target weight for spay-neuter, come in for spay-neuter, and then go on to the adoption floor. The problem with this approach was the adoption floor was packed, the rooms are packed, leads to illness, have all these problems. Plus, the foster kitten parents would say, you know, I've had this cat at home, I've brought it in, and now it's sitting on the adoption floor, it's not getting adopted, it should be home with me. This is terrible. So we're trying to pilot this year, which so far seems to be going pretty well, but we won't really assess it till the full end of the season, where we are keeping a list of the kittens. When the kittens are at the target weight, our coordinator looks to see how much space we have on the adoption floor, and if we have space, we call them in, we send them to spay-neuter, we put them on the floor, and then hopefully they'll just hop right out of there. So far, that approach seems to be working. If you look at our past stats on length of stay, in 2017 and 18, cats were sitting on kittens were sitting on the floor for 16 and 14 days before they made it out of the shelter. This year it's down to 10. So the less time you're in the shelter, the greater chance that you won't get sick.
Is that because you're putting them up for adoption 2 weeks earlier?
Please let her finish her presentation. You'll be able to ask questions in the question period.
But to address it, no, they're going up for adoption at the same time, but there's less of a backlog. So they're still going up for adoption as soon as they've been spayed and neutered, but they're not being brought in to be spayed and neutered until there's availability, there's empty space, people can adopt them, and so they're spending that.
8 weeks, now it's 6 weeks.
They're spending that extra time in their foster homes. So they're going out at the same age. Okay, so what's our total? We talked about how everybody comes in, how does everybody go out? So last fiscal year, 3,000 and change out. So 7 were released in a TNR sense. 7. 57 died while they were with us in their kennels. 190 were redeemed. 256 were euthanized, mostly for medical reasons or owner requested. Dead on arrival is the same 339. We adopted out just over 1,000. And just over 1,100 were transferred to one of our adoption partners. So, of that 1,127 that went to the adoption partners, 1,003 went to SPCA, 124 went to the other partners. Here are the other partners. The partner who's taken the most in the last fiscal year is Give Me Shelter with 42. Then you've got ARF, then you've got Peninsula Humane Society, Snapcat, Tony's Kitty Rescue, Pure Breeds, and Town Cats, and everybody else is under 5. You can see the full list there. So, Queen Nursery. After talking with SPCA and hearing about the Queen Nursery, everyone who worked at the nurseries, well, let me rephrase that. The SPCA's conclusion was that the Queen Nursery experiment was unsuccessful. I've heard that it was a 20-year experiment. Actually, it was a couple of years. 4, fine. Trap, neuter, release, that 20-year program remains in place. So here's SPCA's description of what happened at the nursery. The original nursery was a room with 2 rows of cages. Cages consisted of 2 separate compartments connected by a portal. Cats were provided litter boxes on one side and food and water on the other, as well as towels covering for the front of the cages to provide opportunity for hiding and an attempt to decrease stress from being able to see other cats and or caregivers. Unfortunately, the nursery was not a safe or comfortable place for either the queens or the staff. The queens were still able to hear and smell the other cats in the rooms and were not able to hide, scratch, jump, run, or fully lay out. The cats were routinely stressed during the daily cleaning of cages, and cats would escape during cleaning or staff would injure themselves trying to prevent a cat from escaping. The behavior of the queens, aggression, vocalizing through growling, hissing, stomping, retreating, attempting to hide, and shutting down, made it clear to the staff that they were stressed. Animal care and shelter medicine staff reported a high incidence of upper respiratory infection in the nursery. In early 2019, SPCA tried a different arrangement with queens in individual rooms off a single hallway. This also provided the queens with more space as well as access to a climbing and scratching structure. However, in spite of these changes, the staff who cared for the queens continued to see the same behaviors and incidents of illness that indicated the queens were still experiencing high levels of stress. Additionally, the hope that the queens would demonstrate more natural behaviors, such as scratching or using more areas within the room that we see in friendly cats housed in similar rooms, was not realized. The stress behaviors seen in the queens did not decrease or disappear, even with the attempted improvements in housing. So that's their assessment of that program. Another point I want to make clear that I think I muddled from the beginning in June was that the delaying the intake of feral families was a welfare decision. It was not a decision driven by any statistics. We had said, okay, there are the veterinary community, vets from ACC, vets from SPCA, vets from Davis, said, okay, this is a miserable situation for the Queens. We need to stop doing this. We are no longer doing good. We are mistreating these cats. We are doing the wrong thing, which happens sometimes in animal welfare. After we had that discussion, I said, well, what's the mortality rate in kittens anyway? And then we got the mortality figures. But the mortality figures were not the reason for the decision, nor are the mortality figures a reflection of the quality of care that the kittens received in foster homes. Young, vulnerable kittens die frequently. They do. But it's not any kind of negative reflection on the volunteers who are caring for them. So this is the community cat pathway, and you can see barely that what we're changing is, instead of aggressively going out and bringing in newborn kittens, we're making an assessment about whether those kittens can stay with their moms. And if they can stay with their moms in the field, we are leaving them there. If it is a dangerous situation or hazardous in any way, we go out and we bring them in. So, these are the results that the community cat program at the SPCA has seen so far this year. So they've received just under 280 phone calls. These are some statistics that you received last month, I believe, that 12 of the situations have involved moms and families. One kitten died, one group died immediately, one group was adopted by a neighbor, two groups went into Tony's Kitty Rescue, 3 groups never returned calls, 4 cats went in through TNR, through the Community Cats program, and 1 group is still working with Community Cats. Over at ACC, we've impounded 31 queens. 21 of those went out to foster. Only 8 of those were feral or semi-feral. I want to stress that no cat has been turned away from SPCA. No cat. We don't have people coming in and not being allowed to bring in cats, nor do we have people calling for help and not getting the help they need. We hope that with the support of our volunteers and our adoption partners, we can continue to do this work and we continue to support these efforts. Any questions?
Well, I just wanted to clarify one thing in your statement. You said no cat's been turned away from the SPCA, but I think it might be ACC. Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's been turned away from SPCA, but usually if they get a cat in that doesn't fit in their program, they walk it across the street.
I have a couple of questions. So you had a couple that went through TKR and one that's in community. I don't have the numbers. How did they do in the foster care outside of the shelter? Or do you have?
I don't have that information. I would assume that the cats in TKR are doing well. Generally, cats with TKR do well. The question will be, once the mom is done nursing, can she be adopted out, or is she feral and does she need to be returned? That would be a family by family decision.
And when you decide what equals safe or unsafe, when you get a call in, what does that look like to you? Like, how do you assess an unsafe situation?
Okay, so we have, this is an internal document, but this is the guide for when, this is the guide for when a call comes in, what we do. And so if it's somebody saying, get this cat out of my yard, that's not safe. If it's an active construction site, that's not safe. If it's a cat that's, maybe in a shed in somebody's backyard or under their deck and they're willing to, put out a little food and keep an eye on it, that's safe. And then, of course, there's room in between. Also in this, this document, we have information about the pathway, and we have a description of how you can tell how old the kitten is, but we don't really expect the public to figure that out. That's here for discussion. Purposes when somebody's on the phone, but generally speaking, we want them when they're just beginning to walk.
So that to me is the loaded question I'm gonna ask then. So they start walking, then they start running really quickly after walking. How are you trying to contain that brief window of time of losing them to the general feral cat population, or losing that window of opportunity? And looking at it, again, like you're gonna come back and look at, did this work? Did this experiment, this pilot work? So how are you looking at yourselves to sort of measure that? What kind of indicators are there that, oh, yeah, this is working now, or no?
Well, obviously, we're looking at every call that comes in, and we'll then go back and look at all those outcomes. Now, that population that's out there is 12 families, so it's not a big data set. So we'll have to go back and look at the outcomes of each of those families and how that did.
So who does that, and how do you differentiate that between you and the SPCA? Is it where the call originated?
No, I mean, when the call comes in, and most of the calls do go, when the call comes in, we have a spreadsheet where we're tracking who called, what they called about, that kind of thing, specifically for this issue, because the department does not track all calls coming in. We just don't. We get tons and tons of calls, and we don't keep track of that. Now, what we do keep track of is if we send an officer out to do the trapping. And we historically have not kept track of whether we sent a trapper out. We don't have the data, we have not tracked that. So this year, we're keeping a log on that. So we can say at the end of the year, yes, we sent out a trapper X number of times.
Because it was determined that that was an unsafe situation and we needed to bring those cats in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but historically, so we have no historic documentation on that. That just went in the memo field, and there's, without searching through every cat, you can't figure that out. Even the data that's up there about the queens, that was a hand search. We don't enter the data in that way. We enter the data by each individual animal. And we, in the past 2 years, have started to try and link the litters together, but that's mostly for disease management. So that, for example, Fluffy becomes sick, we can enter Fluffy's number and see, okay, who else did Fluffy come in with? Who else might be sick? How can we go and track, how can we track them down? What do we need to do? But it's not a report that prints out where we can say, okay, we got in 50 moms and here are all their kittens. We don't have the data that way.
Yeah, I know the data's been a sticking point for you for a while. If you had your way, you could say, this would help us understand how we're doing better just by pure data. Forget the qualitative measures of mom, but pure data of the community that's out there. What kinds of things would you like to see in those reports that would be useful in knowing that or good indicators that this is working?
I think a couple of things. First, we track, and historically have tracked mostly to have sort of a census of what's in the shelter, what came in, what came out, how it came in, how it went out. That's sort of our basic bread and butter. Most of that data is geared towards calculating a live release rate, which historically has been a major measure of how a shelter is doing. Now, our live release rate has been in the upper 80s, 90s for like 10 years now. So I am not sure that live release rate is really a good indicator of success once you're at this level. You know, if you're at the 70% level, it's a really big deal. But once you're into the upper 80s, lower 90s, you've really got a pretty good handle on things. And I think it would be great to have a different measure, but so far the field has not, the industry has not come up with one. There are many shelters in the position we are that are, at these really high live release rates, who are trying to figure out, well, okay, how else do we quantify results or measure success or see where we have gaps? The other data we track is to see what we can do to improve our results. So one of the changes we're trying to make is to do a better, to be able to track illness. Right now, I think all we can do is an indirect measure by seeing who got medicated, but we're not able to say, okay, we had 50 URI cases last year and 200 this year, so we have a problem. We kind of know by our gut feel, but we don't have the way we can measure that accurately. So that would be, for example, to move off cats for a minute, if one of I think the biggest animal welfare problems in the city is the pit bull population. So how could we do a better job of measuring where those guys are, how they come in, and why they come in? Why do people have these pit bulls? And how can we get a handle on that? I'd like to be able to measure that, and frankly, right now I can't.
When you use the term "we," just to clarify, because in the presentation there was some data that I'm not sure was from SPCA, ACC, or the 2010 shelter guidelines as far as URI increases and that sort of thing. And then with the data that you're mentioning now that's being collected, is that in concert with data that is at the Community Cats office across the street? Are they involved in the numbers you're collecting, or is this all in-house for ACC?
So we're collaborating with Community Cats on the issue of the feral kitten population, but all the numbers about our intake, our outcomes, those are all ours. The only slides that are joint, this is purely across the street. This is purely ACC. I think everything else is ACC. The stats about illness are, sorry, that's going to take forever. The stats about illness are from a research study that's cited in the preceding slide.
From data?
No, not from our
Okay,
data.
so that's from
shelter.
just generalized shelters out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I guess just in general, do you know if ferals tend to have a longer length of stay, an average length of stay than other cats?
No, I do not know that at the moment because we don't really categorize them that way. My guess would be if we're able to trap, if they're old, if they're adults, right? And it's a feral adult, you can send it over to Community Cats and it can be spayed or neutered and sent back out to the field. That happens very rapidly. That's like a 48-hour process. if you're a feral kitten and you get evaluated and you're one of the litter that we don't feel we can make a friendly cat, you can go back out to your colony if there, if we know there is one very quickly. Where we get stuck is with the 6-month-old kitten who is not friendly, doesn't want to live in a home, but does not really have, is too old to go back to the colony unprepared. So there are a few programs, 10th Life and Barn Cat, that will take those cats or kittens and put them in an environment, in barns mostly, where they are supervised. They're still outside where they want to be, but they're supervised. So there's somebody who's checking on them, feeding them, they become mousers, that kind of thing. But those are really small programs, very few and far between. So that's the desired, so really don't, that's the hard nut to crack.
Okay, so you don't really know, I guess. You were talking about how feral kittens are, a queen and feral kittens are reported to you. You send someone out to assess the situation now?
No, we actually have gotten, I think, only 2 calls this year?
I think 3.
Maybe 3 calls?
I'm just talking about the new protocol, I guess.
Yeah, but we've only gotten 3 calls under the new protocol. So under the new protocol, the person answering the phone will evaluate, which is what they always did before, like, do I need to call a trapper or not? And if we feel a trapper needs to go out, the trapper goes out. Like, one went out Monday, but when he got there, he was unable to find the kittens. Not his fault, they were gone, that was a construction site.
Okay, I'm just trying to, I guess, go along with what the protocol and the process is here, and just the follow-up, I guess. So you will receive a call, someone will assess the situation and go out in the field and assess the situation, or it's all done over the phone?
No, the initial assessment is done over the phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you'll say it's safe for those feral cats, those kittens out there. We're not going to go out there and trap them. We want to leave them where they are because it's safer for them in that environment at the present time, correct?
Exactly.
Is that just done once? The conditions are constantly changing. Just because they're safe now doesn't mean that they're safe and in a good position tomorrow. So how is there any follow-up done with these, and how do you know that that little queen and her kittens are continually being safe and don't need to be trapped and brought into a shelter or looked after because they're not safe the next day?
I believe we would need a follow-up call to know that they were not safe. We do not actively go out and...
So once you make the initial assessment and believe that there's not follow-up needed, you don't follow up?
We receive a call and get the information, then CCP follows up immediately.
So if we're leaving them outside, we refer them to community cats across the street.
Okay.
And community cats follows up.
No problem. I'm just trying to, like I said, just trying to
Get that.
see what's going on here. And then I
Jump in
guess,
as a part B to that real quick?
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
come back to that. Just so I understand the intake properly, is there any coordination between community cats and SPCA, or is there a chance that somebody could call you, then call them and get a different answer? After you guys counsel them, they can go over and get a trap at SPCA, or is there a coordinated approach so that these calls are only getting handled sort of one time by one organization?
We're both trying to be consistent and say exactly the same thing, but if somebody calls both places, yeah, we're not gonna know that you called SPCA.
And Community Cats isn't getting the data from both places?
Community Cats is getting, Community Cats is a program within SPCA, and we are telling Community Cats, like if it's a situation out there, we'll tell them.
But if we get a frantic set of neighbors and 3 people are calling, they potentially could be told different things
Well,
to
if
do
you
with
get
the
a
same
frantic,
cat.
if it's a frantic set of neighbors, odds are it's unsafe, and we're sending a trapper out.
Highly concerned, maybe.
Yeah, well,
In
yeah.
love with the kittens.
Well, if they're in love with the kittens and taking care of the kittens, as we had that one family who paid for the spay neutering themselves, which was certainly fabulous. Great, but, you know, if neighbors become concerned, then odds are people are going out. And Community Cats, I believe, keeps the record. They have a master list of who's called and where they are and all that, because they're keeping the main list.
So this is a follow-up to Russell's question, which you're probably just about to ask too. When you're on the phone, you take a call, and you say it's a safe situation, and it's okay, and they're willing to do it, and then they, let's say they initiate a call back, or CCP calls them back and says, how are things going? What are the warning signs, or are there warning signs that you're giving to them as instructions, like, you start to see this, please give us a call? Do you have any protocols in place for that, so that they know what's unusual and worrisome?
I am seeing a lot of nodding yeses.
I mean, I
do
do
know
so.
what, I do know what those are, but Ariana, would you like to address that question?
You know, actually, we can, so the way that it,
Please go
do you want me to,
ahead.
yeah. Okay. So when we receive a call, the officers that are taking dispatch, they go through the staff script and they figure out triaging, are they safe, et cetera. So once that happens and we've got compliance with the reporting party, we'll take down their information for contact. I immediately pass that on to CCP. CCP immediately follows up. They get on their master list and then they're followed up with repeatedly to make sure that things are going well. What that conversation looks like, I don't have control over, so I couldn't speak to what that looks like.
Okay, good. I know the general public doesn't quite know what to do with, I wouldn't expect that anybody would, so getting that instruction is incredibly important. Okay, those are my questions.
I guess I have just one more question. And it's kind of, I guess, the crux of the biscuit. And not sure you can answer it, but hopefully we can figure this one out. Obviously a lot of people here and a lot of volunteers here. The ACC and the SPCA have their kind of version. I'm just kind of really wondering if you can address why the ACC and the SPCA's version of what's going on with the health and the well-being of the mother and the feral cats is so drastically different than the volunteers. They seem to be giving quite a different take on how the feral cats are treated, their well-being within their care, the well-being that they've seen at the ACC and the SPCA in their care. I mean, given directly pictures that are counteracted by different people and telling the direct opposite of each other. It just seems that you're at very odds with the same concept. So I'm just wondering if maybe you could address that, why you think one way and the volunteers who are working with you every day think another way.
I think I'd like to clarify the volunteer issue. There are volunteers who work with us every day, some of whom are here. And then there are the volunteers who are part of Tony's Kitty Rescue who are doing the fostering in their home. So they're an adoption partner, and that may seem like splitting hairs, but in all the partnerships we have 25 or so adoption partners across all our species. We have certain standards for adoption partners, assuming they meet those standards. And we have animals that we say, if you want, would you take this animal? Can you take this animal? Do you want to take this animal? They can say yes, they can say no. That's up to them. And if they take an animal, they're managing that animal and that process in their environment, and it is no longer an animal. And we keep our eyes and ears open to make sure that they seem to be performing to what we feel is in the best interest generally of the animals they have. And when we have adoption partners who we feel are not meeting those standards, we will just discontinue using them. And they go on their merry way doing whatever they do. We have volunteers who are in the shelter, who then need to, when they're working in our shelter, they need to follow our protocols, follow our programs, do what we feel is in the best interest for our population. In cats, that's divided into two groups, our regular volunteers and our advanced volunteers, who are the orange cat volunteers. The volunteers who work with Tony, that all happens in their homes. And so when we give the cat or the kittens over to Tony's Kitty Rescue, we have a great deal of faith in Tony Sestak. We are confident that she is giving great care. And I have no doubts that the volunteers are giving great care in their homes. I think I have heard some comments from some of the volunteers and from some of the adoption partners that were highly critical of our staff and the care that they're giving, saying that our staff is not comfortable with ferals. I think that is completely untrue, cannot be supported by anything, and I just can't agree with it.
Yeah, that's not really addressing my question. Like I said, there are dozens of people here for 2 months. We've heard dozens of people who volunteer at the ACC.
No,
Literally,
no, a lot of them do not.
But a lot of them do.
Some of them do.
Some of them do,
not.
and they are giving completely direct answers and evaluations than what the ACC and the SPCA are giving. And we're just trying to figure out why there is that complete opposite reaction. The volunteers who work with these animals every day, who have taken pictures of animals in your shelter and put them up on that board, have said this queen is perfectly fine, she's doing just fine. You've put pictures of the same cat on there and said, look at how terrified she is, this is a disaster. We're just trying to figure out where the variance is coming from and where the disparity is coming from and how to join those two things. Obviously, everyone here wants the same outcome. We're all trying to get to the same ends. We're just trying to figure out how to work together to get the both outcome for the cats.
Sure, and so.
We're just, like I said, this whole issue came up to us because the volunteers at the ACC said something is wrong with this program, we need to change this program. That's why we started all of this. They came to us. We didn't bring this issue up ourselves.
I am, at least the people that I've heard speak, one was an ACC volunteer, the other one is not. She is an adoption partner. We have different perspectives on lots of things. I think we are placing our assessment in terms of what we're seeing in these cats based on the expertise of our veterinary team, SPCA's veterinary team, and UC Davis's veterinary team. These are people who have had many, many years of school and training and are looking at these cats and saying, shut down is not the same as okay. And I think that behavior is one of the biggest differences we have. I think, the more hissing, spitting, growling, that kind of thing when it happens, I think we can all agree, whoa, that's feral behavior. I think what we disagree on is whether you can turn that behavior around successfully to make it a cat who is happy in a home. Now, that said, any adoption partner or new adoption partner who says, I want to take your feral cats because I am sure I can turn them around, that's fine. But we don't think that that's appropriate. And we're relying on the expertise of people who've been doing this for many, many years in a professional capacity. They're the ones with the license and all, to quote somebody else, all the letters after their name. So as a public agency, when I'm looking at public policy, I'm gonna trust the professionals who are trained in this and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Now that said, we are still continue to be open to working with partners who want to set up a separate program. That's fine. That is clearly an option.
And you mean, by a separate program, you mean Queens and Kittens program, separate?
Yeah, if somebody wanted to set up a Queens and Kittens program, 501c3, get it up and going, you know, and we feel, okay, it meets a cat's needs, it's not harmful, you know, that's fine.
Right.
Because it's clear to us, it is not farm in our shelter.
I guess one last quick question. I've asked this before, there's still no plans to create a mother space in the new shelter?
No, the shelter plans were developed, you know, finalized 18 months ago. So no, there is no mother space in the new shelter. It was never part of our programming, has never been part of our programming.
I have a couple questions. So I understand there was a July meeting for volunteers. I was under the impression that the meeting would be open to all volunteers, ACC volunteers, and the rescue volunteers, which seemed to be my mistake. So my question is, you know, and understanding the difference between the volunteers you work with directly and the adoption partner volunteers, has there been any efforts to reach out to the rescue volunteers in these last several months where, you know, they've been bringing up this issue and we've been trying to address this issue? Has there been any outreach to try and have a dialogue with specifically them? Because it does seem that, you know, we are still relying on them for care for this population.
So Dr. Scarlett at the SPCA met with the trapper community, I think 2 or 3 times. They also had a meeting for their volunteers. And many of the trappers were or are their volunteers.
Do you have trapper volunteers?
No, not officially. Our volunteers, there are volunteer trappers who have come in and, you know, done trapping for us, but the trapping program is run by the Community Cats program across the street. So they have responded to our calls, but we don't have a volunteer trapper program per se.
Okay, my other question is, you know, you talked about tracking the 12 families that you have in. Are you making other efforts to either track the feral cat population outside of that? Because there was a question that was asked in the initial meeting that I don't believe has been answered yet, which I think it was Commissioner Tobin who actually brought it up. Basically, who is responsible for the feral cat population? Is it ACC, or who else would that be?
We are not responsible for we are responsible for all domestic wildlife, all of that. I don't think we're like, I can't think of how we would be officially responsible for the feral cats. The Community Cat Program does reside in SPCA, which has been very fortunate for us as an agency. I don't think we have a sort of a legal mandate to deal with the feral cats. That's the question.
That is my question.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
I guess maybe, let's imagine a scenario in which the feral cat population was endangered in some way. Some disease or some outbreak or massive coyote attack. Who would take that call? Probably you guys, right?
Yeah, we would probably, I'm thinking about the coyotes, and we are responsible for the coyotes, but coyotes are wildlife,
Right.
you know, so we have a very strict prescription about what we can and we cannot do. Like,
Right.
you know, feral cats, I am not so sure, I would have to look into that.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
You know, just a little bit of a clarification, not clarification, just a restatement. So you are open to the idea that rescue partners may be interested in a feral queen and kitten effort. And if they meet the standards of ACC and their ability to work capacity for care is at a high level, at your level, of what you consider capacity for care, it's for them, you're okay. So, because there's been some rescue groups who've come in and said, we have the staff, or the people, the bodies, the interested parties who would want to do that. It's not so much a formal 501c3.
Yeah, I think we would need to be able to, I think, pass it off to another organization. We are developing, I think they're in draft form, I don't think they've been approved yet, standards for housing for feral queens. That we've been working with some of the volunteers on to say, okay, this is what we would expect.
Okay.
And so far, those people are managing, in fact, the 31, 21, whatever it is, queens that we've gotten in this year. They don't, most of them, I think it's 21 of them in foster. They are going to those folks.
Okay.
If there was a highly responsible 501c3 program that you approved of, could they even be involved in the initial call handling for public education and assessment on whether or not those animals would need to be removed, given that you would be certifying the relationship?
Probably. In the conversations we've had and that Rocky and I have had in the past, he has said, can I go out and evaluate? And I said, well, does that mean, Rocky, you're going to go out and every time you're going to say the queen needs to come in? And he said, yes, that is what I'm going to do. So, you know, that's when we sort of ended that discussion and said, okay, well, that really doesn't address what we feel is the problem for the feral queens, because you're just bringing them to me, and I know what I have is not good. But
do you know what they have is that good? That's the question.
No, but I mean, if there were some group that formed, they could do all that. Yeah, I think that's certainly something up for conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open to when there's a queens in danger, if there is some group that, well, when the queens in danger would come on and they go through foster anyway. But if somebody wanted to set up something to specialize in ferals, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
One thing I just wanted to note, because I think there's some confusion about what we as a commission can do. So I just wanted to let you know, we're not really mediators. So we can't sit here and come to some sort of compromise solution for you. We just want to daylight everything that's being done, make it public record. If we have recommendations, we can do that. We can only go so far, and I'm not saying that to push responsibility off of what we can do. I'm just trying to set the limits of what we're capable of as an organization. And I appreciate all your time and effort in coming out here to present how you feel about this situation. I think there's been a lot of pros and cons to the discussions that we've had here too, but I hope we're moving in the right direction, and I hope that this idea of this public forum is giving you more confidence that there can be work done with both parties to move forward. Not as a mediator, I'm not saying that as a mediator, I'm just saying it as a person who's witnessing this conversation. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to comment. We'll give you a 3-minute time period. I will time you and allow you to speak for 3 minutes. Once your 3 minutes are up, your 3 minutes are up, please. We have probably many people who want to speak. So is there any public comment? Step on up, please. Far away. Please state your name and then speak so that we can get it for the public record.
Okay. Well, I'm a filmmaker who's been following this topic since about 2013, but my original thing that got me started in animal welfare was feral cats and kittens in Israel. Feral kittens have about 50%, there's about 50% of them die in the wild, and they're some of the most pathetic, grisly, disgusting deaths I've ever seen. Happens here too. So the idea that you're leaving these, it's okay to leave these animals out is just so sad to me. I just can't even believe it. Also, as a filmmaker, because I'm researching more topics on the animal world, I did visit the San Diego Humane Society's kitten nursery, and it was the first one in the country. And as part of, they really have a no-kill safety net in San Diego for kittens. And one part of their program involves a queen nursery. There are vets working there, it works fine. I feel like facts matter, that the evidence we've been giving is anecdotal from specific people in San Francisco. I was down there, I witnessed it, I saw it. There are places that are making this work. Nevada Humane Society is also featured in my documentary, and they have a similar program run by volunteers and with foster care. They have 2,000 volunteers at least. People love the shelter, 96% live release rate in that shelter. And to me, to say that live release rate doesn't matter, I mean, to me, like, what else does matter then in a shelter that you're getting these animals out of the shelter and into adoptive homes? But I think the bar is so low in sheltering from what I've seen. I'm a teacher, which is a professional development all day today. We have to use data-driven, effective strategies for our special needs students. And we don't just get to say, oh, well, I think this kid needs this. We need to use strategies that are really based on data. And the data does not support this whole idea that queen nurseries don't work, that it's okay to leave little kittens out in the wild to get smushed and torn apart and die horrible suffering deaths. So I also have to say that this whole idea of the LOS, the time in shelter and the Nevada Humane Society is 21 days. No one's complaining about it. Everything's fine. It's a very healthy shelter. Overcrowding is dealt with in the most extreme places with volunteers. Their kittens are on the floor sometimes for as little as an hour. They have absolutely no problem. Their kittens are the most adoptable animal in a shelter. And you know, if you get the community involved, they will help you. They will help you to solve your problems, but you need to show them that you want to save the animals' lives, and because they don't want to see this type of stuff.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Conlon, think you know me. I'm a rescue adoption partner at ACC. I am the person that Virginia spoke of when she talked about the person speaking on behalf of the cats. And it's not just that I was I volunteer with the Orange program at ACC, and I'm also a citizen of San Francisco, therefore I have an interest in the cat community and what happens here, and what happens with our feral cats and kittens. So it's not just that I don't think we should have to be a ACC volunteer to have concern about what's going on in San Francisco and what's going on at ACC. So I also asked if I could speak in behalf this evening and was not given the opportunity, so I just want to state that for the record. And I also want to say a couple things in regards to what Virginia stated was, you know, I completely respect veterinary staff and I respect the years of school and studies that you go through, but a lot of the people that do the rescue work, I mean, they're boots on the ground, they're with those cats and understanding their behavior and connecting with them, perhaps in a different way because they don't have to give a vaccination to the cat, you know, they don't have to look at their teeth to see how their medical is, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit, might be a different experience. So I definitely do not want to disrespect the veterinary staff. I also want to give credit to the people that are doing the boots on the ground work, the people in the rescues, the volunteers, in the, you know, the people fostering those cats. And you know, again, no one disagrees that any cat is stressed in the shelter. 100%, we take cats out all the time that are simply stressed in the shelter, and once you put them in a foster home, they completely relax and they're a different cat. Some take a little bit longer to relax. Also, I just want to state that it is not true that kittens are not turned away from ACC. A volunteer of Gimme Shelter, a trapper, brought in a 2.5-pound kitten and that was under-socialized, and the person at the front desk told her to take the kitten to the community cat program at SPCA. And I know because I weighed the kitten later at my house how much the kitten weighed. It's my understanding that ACC is willing to take in and socialize kittens up to 3 pounds, not the 6 pounds which Virginia stated. I agree, once they get older, it gets harder, but it shouldn't be a hard and fast rule. It should be a case-by-case basis, because sometimes they're simply fearful when they first arrive in the shelter and then they relax, maybe in just 3 days' time. Also, just want to quickly address the statistic regarding the 45% mortality rate of kittens under 4 weeks old. This was stated in the San Francisco Chronicle, also sent out to the ACC volunteers, that there was a mortality rate of kittens under 4 weeks old. Included in the statistic was 28% of kittens that arrived DOA, meaning kittens, like she said, were already deceased or dying when they arrived on impound. And so you're putting this statistic out there saying that, oh, we're doing really poorly with the kittens, but over half of the kittens are showing up that are already deceased. In addition, it's my understanding that ACC has a policy to euthanize kittens that come in with their eyes closed or an umbilical cord still attached. That was also so that euthanasia statistic wasn't differentiated in their data. Perhaps if those kittens had actually come in with a mom, is my time up? Okay.
Sorry.
They would have had a chance. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Nadine May, 20-year trapper, rescuer, native of San Francisco, and generally very proud of my city, but not right now. I would ask Virginia Donohue why she didn't bother coming to the first presentation when lots of foster moms got up, and dads, and spoke and showed pictures of the queens and the kittens in their homes who were perfectly well treated, who were not stressed at all, who were nursing their kittens. If she'd been here, she might have seen something completely different. SPCA says that they closed their nursery because it was a failure. Well, it wasn't a failure. Again, there were 85 moms and 300 kittens brought in over 4 years. Not a single mom died over 4 years. 5 kittens out of 300 died in that nursery. Do you call that a failure? Is that a failure? It's less than 2% mortality rate. How is that a failure? Next, I have to say that ACC, I believe, is passing along all calls regarding mothers and kittens automatically to SPCA. So I don't think ACC is doing any triage. Correct me if I'm wrong. I called a couple of months ago regarding a mother and kittens who were just starting to walk. I called SPCA, and I was told by the person who answered the phone, leave them out there a couple more weeks till they're old enough to be fixed, trap them yourself, bring them in here, we'll fix them, and we'll put them all back out. And I said, don't you mean just the mom will go back out? No, the kittens would go out too. I said, 2-month-old kittens? Yes, we're a TNR program, and that's what we do. Now, it turns out later she gave out wrong information. But this is one of the people in the Community Cats program giving a member of the public completely wrong information. Those kittens were starting to walk, meaning that was exactly the time to trap them. Last but not least, I have to say, I mean, this is a kitten that's what, 6 weeks old, can be fixed at this age, maybe? Both ACC and SPCA are sending kittens that they call feral to be fixed and put back out in backyards where maybe they'll be fed, in industrial sites, near railroad tracks, in parks, where they have no idea how they'll get. How is a kitten twice as big as this gonna get food? How? How is it gonna fend for itself? And last but not least, I have to say that I believe ACC is a publicly funded shelter, should take in any animal. We have a right to say what happens with the shelter. They don't have a right to say that a 2.5-pound kitten is too feral, should be fixed, and just put back out.
That's right.
And this is a hard thing to say, but I believe that Animal Care and Control is apparently becoming a subsidiary of SPCA. SPCA draws the line.
It's your time.
That's what ACC does. They're following the lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Patricia Briggs. I just wanted to say, as regards what Ms. Donohue said, I mean, it's totally true, of course, it's just common sense that these cats would be very terrified in a shelter setting, but I have to say, I've done recovery for about 50 feral cats, mainly when Mary Ann Buxton, who started the program, was in charge of it, and I have to say that I bought like 4 huge Great Dane carriers that we put in our basement. I would, you know, put a kennel in there. I'd put all kinds of towels over it, nice fleece. In a nice litter box, I'd put a rug in there for them to scratch their nails because that's part of their sort of enrichment and one of their needs. And some of these cats, they were in various degrees of feralness. Some of them were totally wild. The next morning, there would be everything all over the place. You know, the food and water was all over the floor. They didn't use a litter box, the towel was in the litter box. Some of them peed in the carrier, and then it was a nightmare trying to get them back in the carrier to go back out in the field because they're not going to go back into a carrier that they peed in. But nevertheless, some of them were just, you know, terrified. They'd be in the carrier the next morning with their eyes, you know, dilated, and they'd be sort of frozen. But they were all in varied degrees of terror, whatever. So the point is, trap and neuter is already terrifying for them. So is that to say we don't trap and neuter them anymore? It's not the ideal world. Nothing is. There's very few win-win situations in this world. And I have to say also that a lot of the cats we took into our house were from Hunters Point, Bayview, Visitation Valley, Western Addition, where there's a lot of, you know, poor people living, and a lot of people just dump their cats, which is no excuse. Doesn't matter if you're poor or rich. You have to be responsible. And I took a lot of cats in from this one area in Hunters Point on Middle Point Drive, and the feeder had to feed them outside this PG&E Field substation because that was the only place to feed them. There were radiation signs all over the place. There was a person that was murdered at a bus stop just a few yards away. There were foxtails in this PG&E Field substation all over the place. And a lot of these cats are getting killed by cars because, and talk about coyotes, a lot of these cats are not killed by coyotes, they're killed by cars. There are 1,000,000 trillion more cars in this world than there are coyotes. So I told the feeder, I said, you know, I can't put these cats back out there because I know they're going to get killed. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I agree that some of these cats want to be out free. Even though they are wild, they act wild, but they are still from original domesticated stock that we tamed, you know, thousands of years ago. So the bottom line is prevention. Mary Ann Buxton did door hangers. You know, they went out, they had projects where they'd call in a lot of different trappers, and then, you know, they'd put up.
That's your 3 minutes,
Yeah.
thanks.
So prevention with door hangers, education is, these cats shouldn't be out there at all.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Director Donohue.
I want to first say that I think we all would agree that the queens may be exhibiting some stress and experiencing stress, but also equally the kittens are suffering. And we've already talked about how coyotes, poison cars, et cetera, impact the high mortality of kittens. So in essence, this new policy will actually potentially increase mortality of kittens rather than decrease. In addition, as they get older, they become more mobile and then they reproduce. And they're not TNR'd because you can't catch them as easily. So the two outcomes potentially of this change in policy are that there's going to be an increase in the stray population in San Francisco and an increase in kitten mortality. Both of those are not outcomes that we want as a city, and I'm a resident of the city. In addition, the kittens, as already has been alluded to, are the easiest to adopt. I mean, we know from the literature that older cats and adult cats are hard to adopt. So why are we abandoning these kittens? I was a former feral kitten socializer, and I've turned around many kittens. Importantly, those mortality statistics that include the dead on arrival are not appropriate. They are inflating the statistics. Obviously, a kitten that comes in, with all due respect, don't take up cage space and they don't have a length of stay, et cetera, et cetera. So take out those dead on arrival statistics. That is misleading the public. We do not have a mortality rate of 45%. It's closer to about 10%, which is a big difference. Third, how are we going to improve outcomes? I mean, this is the bottom line. Tell the SPCA to stop taking and importing kittens from outside of San Francisco. According to the partnership statistics, they took in from outside of San Francisco 1,458 cats and kittens and 1,658 dogs and puppies. That's over 3,000 animals coming from outside of San Francisco, and only 224 kittens were transferred to the SPCA in 2019, and this is on the partnership statistics. That's ridiculous. The SPCA has to take more kittens and has to be more responsible. This is just, if they're talking about capacity for care, we need to increase the capacity for caring in the heart and not in just their deep financial pockets. Fourth, this idea of capacity for care, if you look at any of the literature, has nothing to do with kittens. There's no evidence base for this. It's all case studies and case reports and observational studies. There are no good studies about the capacity for care. This is an additional gimmick that the UC Davis and the SPCA are engaging in, and there needs to be either more research on this issue, and importantly, capacity for care does not talk about kittens. So those are my points I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thanks much.
Hi, my name's Spani Evnakis. I'm a long-term volunteer at Animal Care and Control and a frequent donor to Friends of Animal Care and Control. And I just want to express my concern and my dismay over the recent changes in the way that ACC and SPCA are handling feral mom cats and kittens. I think the policy is unfounded and cruel. It's baffling to me and very, very disturbing that ACC would adopt such inhumane ways of dealing with vulnerable animals. I really hope that you will reconsider this policy. I've listened to Dr. Hurley and I've read the UC Davis materials, which are not pertinent to our situation in San Francisco. The approach endorsed by UC Davis is more appropriate for regions that are overrun with feral cats, which is certainly not the case here in San Francisco, precisely because the previous programs were so successful in humanely diminishing the feral cat population. Additionally, San Francisco has a robust community of dedicated, knowledgeable trappers and volunteers and fosters who have a history of successful partnership with ACC and SPCA. Why on earth would ACC discontinue referring SF residents who have found kittens to these trappers, who could trap the kittens along with their mom when the kittens are young enough to be socialized and later adopted into loving homes? Waiting until the kittens are older is very risky. According to some studies, the kitten mortality rate in the wild is 50 to 75%. And the older the kitten, the more likely it will be difficult to socialize and get adopted. So the earlier kittens are trapped, the better. This is just common sense. I could go on about the claim of stress to feral moms, but I think we all know that feral moms that have a safe, comfortable, warm place to nurse their kittens in a foster home are going to gain weight, they're going to be able to care for kittens, and those kittens have a much better outcome. And I really, really I really implore ACC to think about this again. It's the mandate of a city shelter to care for all animals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elva Granite. I'm a 6-year volunteer with ACC. I wanted to start off by reading the mission statement, at least the first paragraph of ACC's mission statement.
Can you speak into the mic a little bit more?
Yes. The San Francisco Department of Animal Care and Control is a taxpayer-funded open admission animal shelter. Since 1989, SFACC has provided housing, care, and medical treatment to wild, exotic, and domestic stray, lost, abandoned, sick, injured, and surrendered animals. SFACC's doors are open to all animals in need, regardless of species, medical, or behavioral condition. I would like to ask you to send a clear recommendation to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors to stop and reverse the cruel and destructive policy. Please help us return to treating homeless cats, kittens, and their moms in a progressive and humane manner. Rehashing data and inapplicable out-of-date research papers does nothing to meet the needs of the homeless cats. They are out there suffering and dying as we gather here tonight. Time is of the essence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Bernstein, and I brought some information that I would like to share with the supervisors. Can we stop the clock on my 3 minutes for a second while I bring this up? May I do that? Thank you.
Yes, just to let you know, we're not supervisors, we're
Oh,
commissioners.
I'm sorry, commissioners, I was thinking.
No problem.
Thank you. Need to refresh the cache. Thank you, commissioners. What I'd like you to see is what happened when I wrote to both SPCA and ACC to express my concern about the new policy. I got absolutely no response from ACC. I got an email from Dr. Scarlett with a link to a UC Davis site, and I have all of this printed out here so you can see what the public is receiving when we express our concern. The link that's given is an opinion article. It is not anything based in fact, and the author clearly states that there's absolutely no data to support the idea of when is a good time to trap. So we have a tremendous controversy where there is no data to support it. Now, that opinion article listed several references, and I looked them up, and I have included the pertinent studies that the public was given. And I would really like to talk about what they say. The first one talks about the mortality rate statistics that were represented in the Give Me Shelter presentation last time. 75% of kittens will die left in the wild, 6 months and younger. And that actually allows us to quantify the impact of the ACC change because they have provided their mortality rate statistics. They're skewed in that DOA kittens were included, but if you just take what they say, 45% mortality rate, you compare that to 75%, and look at their intake. What that means is under the old policy, almost 1,600 kittens were saved over 2 years, were prevented from excruciating deaths. This study also shows that 90% of the kittens who died in the wild died from animal attack or motor vehicles. So this references what the filmmaker was saying earlier about the benefit of the old policy, the amount of suffering that it prevents. We can quantify from the study that is being referenced the direct impact. This is not subjective, this is actually a calculation of how many animals will die. In addition to that, another study reference was about sheltered cats. It was a study supposedly to recommend single or group housing, and they broke it down into feral and domesticated cats. The feral cats represented only 13 cats of the entire study. And the idea of making recommendations for feral cat management based on a 21-year-old study using only 13 cats, 13 feral cats, just simply, it's too small a sample size, you cannot get accurate results. But what is important in that study, and it's included here also, I believe what's important here, is that they measure the stress levels of cats. All of the cats were stressed, every single one of them, domesticated and feral. However, what is being presented to us is that the feral cats are unreasonably stressed. In fact, there is very little difference in stress between the domesticated and feral. After 3 days, everybody levels out. All of them, the feral and the domesticated cats, are right around the median line. The measurement was 1 is low, no stress, and 7 is the most stress.
That's your time, thanks.
They're all about halfway point.
Thanks.
Hi. Hello. Hi. I wasn't planning to come up here, but my name is Laura Birdsall. I'm the manager of community cares or community cats at SPCA. And I think there were a couple of questions that Virginia couldn't answer. So I just wanted to say, I think to was your point about the collaboration and not being mediators. I just want to say that we do have a really great group of volunteers, and now we have ACC leadership involved as well as a guiding coalition for the community cats, and the conversation is ongoing. It's not a conversation that is stopped by any means, and a lot of what we are doing is reaching out to the community members who are calling about these cats and want to do what's right by these cats, and trying to involve them in part of the decision and the ongoing care. So I think to your question about do we continue to check in on these cats, we do. We call them weekly. They also call us if they have any concerns. But part of what we're working with the volunteers, we have some wonderful volunteers that have fostered feral cats in the past, and they're helping build kind of some guidelines and best practices to provide people who are willing to try to essentially foster these queens where they are in the field. So those conversations are ongoing. Put down on the record and see if there's any other questions.
No, unfortunately, it's not the public.
Oh, sorry.
Questions.
Those are the ones that I wrote down, so.
That's okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other public comment?
I'm Dr. Mark Lemire, and I would like to ask Ms. Donohue why kittens now are being put up for adoption at 6 weeks, where the policy for the last N decades has been 8 weeks. And we're seeing these little tiny kittens coming up for adoption that are so small they don't even know how to play with a string. It's heartbreaking. I mean, that's aside from the trapping issue, but I'm sure it reduces time in shelter by 2 weeks. And I'd also like to say, in response to your comment about paid ads in the adoption packets, those ads don't say any place that they're paid for by anybody, which they should if you don't want to have the appearance of conflict of interest. I mean, it's clearly conflict of interest.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Nope. Okay, public comment is closed. I'm not sure, do you want to say something?
Yeah, something, can I just kind of?
Yeah, I guess.
So what's different from the last meetings that we've had versus the meetings that we're having right now is I hear a willingness on the part of ACC to continue a feral queen kitten program through rescue partners who are willing to do that if the standards are met to that it works, that it's going to be a situation where the disease can be controlled, things like that. Now I just want to clarify. Is that true? I've heard that, right? I didn't misunderstand that. That if a rescue partner is willing to take on the younger feral queens, or sorry, not, that gap time, that's okay if it's a safe environment.
Sorry, I'm just swaying to come closer. Yeah, absolutely. We have standards we're working on. We've been consulting with some of the trappers and some of the very experienced fosters. If those standards can be met, it's a 501c3 or a subsidiary of an existing 501c3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess this is my permission to say something probably not very popular, but maybe in the evolution of kitten care in San Francisco, what I've seen is a rescue group, they came in and said, the current shelter situation is unsafe for kittens coming in who are orphaned. It is not good for them to be there. So,
I think we completely agree on that.
and the formation of many of the rescue partners came under that. How we're going to deal with the kitten population that is best for the kitten. That includes socialization, a safe, loving environment, introduction to some resume building skills for kittens so that they're more easily adopted. They get kids, dogs, families, they feel more at home, they act more at home. And you're short. So I see a willingness for the community to understand that that's really important. And to me, I'm seeing that this is another evolution of that. It's that recognition that at the shelter, perhaps, that's not what's best. And I've heard that from some of you here, not all of you, but some of you, that and at the shelter, it's more stressful for the mother and the kittens. And in your own homes, you have great results.
Who's gonna pay for all this?
Well,
Are we
that's
supposed
a
to
big
just?
question. I'm also, in addition to not being a mediator, I don't do funding, so I can't tell you how that gets done. But you could talk to your partners. How does it work with Tony?
Do you have any idea how underfunded the partners are?
Yes, I was one, yes.
Okay, this is the government, it's supposed to be taking care of the animals in the city, right?
Exactly.
So why
Right.
not?
And
You just like
It's a
to
city
we can't have a
shelter.
discussion with you guys,
Right,
sorry.
right, yeah, I'm
It's not an
sorry,
open
I'm sorry for
discussion.
doing that, and that's why I said permission to kind of say something that's kind of unpopular. It's an evolution with lots of unanswered questions, but I'm trying to get to the nut of like, what is a good environment for feral queens and kittens, and you seem to have some similar ideas on that and some that are not. So,
And it does exist in an institution, San Diego Humane Society.
You can't comment
I
to us,
know,
I'm sorry,
I
you
know,
can't
but
make
it's just like so
it's already
frustrating.
over, you've had your chance to public
I know.
comment, we have to have some sort of order.
I'm sorry. It's
okay, so I said the unpopular thing. That's just it, I want to leave it there.
Russell, I have a question for the commissioners that I need to input on. So last month, we all voted to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors. There is a draft of that letter. Given all the information that we're getting, I have a question for the commissioners while we try to finalize that letter, which is, other than reporting on the situation, what is the ask for the Board of Supervisors? And one potential suggestion would be, asking them who is responsible for this feral cat population. Another suggestion could be, kind of to the comments of the rescue volunteers, why isn't it the city's responsibility? And, if it is the city's responsibility, perhaps funding could be found for that. Because again, if the issue that we were discussing last month, which was mostly like data and data access, doesn't seem to be an issue of funding or resources or oversight. So there's no real ask on that issue other than reporting on it. So I'm wondering, is there, given what's transpired in this month, what is the ask to the Board of Supervisors, or what is the recommendation? And maybe we can give some input or ask for input from volunteers or public.
I think exactly what you just said is what we want to ask them. Who's responsible? Is there funding available? How can we get people responsible and resolve this issue?
Okay, that makes sense to me.
We've clearly identified a problem that warrants funding.
And you're working on drafting that, correct? Because that was what we had last month?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess, I don't know where to go from here.
So we can go ahead, you have the draft, you know what 2 things, 2 action things to ask for. We're gonna do that in the letter. That'll go out to the Board of Supervisors by the end of, the middle of next week. should we say?
That's fine for my timeline. I did want to get Anne Marie's input or someone else's input,
That's
so
fine.
if someone wants to work.
Rachel's on vacation, so go ahead with Anne Marie.
Okay.
For sure, since you've been talking to her about this anyway.
Yeah, we just can't discuss it further than that. We can go over it with her.
Okay, so motion to send that to.
Well, I think we did that last week.
Okay,
Last
all
week,
right.
It's
Once
already,
again, with
it's already,
those two action requests.
I guess, do we even have to, I mean, I guess sure, a motion to change the draft of the Board of Supervisors, letter to the Board of Supervisors to include those two questions. And is there funding available and who is ultimately responsible for the feral cat population?
Yes.
Among, including the other questions and statements we have. I guess motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, anyone, and, agreement, say aye?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
I guess, yeah, ayes have it. Anyone in disagreement? There's no one up, so, okay. So, we'll go ahead and send that draft, we'll get the draft, you, run it by Anne Marie and talk to her, and then we'll send it to the Board of Supervisors. Okay.
Where can we see the draft? Is it available? Where would you go? Can you give us an
You can wait till, old business C, where we'll be discussing exactly that. So if there's any more from the commissioners, I guess we can move on. Okay,
One quick thing, since, you know, this is a really important item and this technology gap that we have right now is still being solved, we'll get to that later. I just want you to know that we will get it up there ASAP, make it a priority. So as soon as that letter is in final form, we'll get it up on our website, okay? And I'll send it to Maria, okay? And to Jen Clark as well. Is there anybody else that I should include on that list? Perhaps that should do it to get to the, okay, good.
Okay, moving on. Old business B, 5B. San Francisco dog licensing, it's discussion action item from Commissioner Arani. San Francisco requires dog guardians to register their pets. The commission will discuss this regulation.
Right, so following on from last month, where the concern from Supervisor Fuhrer is basically that most dogs in the city are not licensed, and how can we increase that licensing? Is it through enforcement? Is it through requiring reporting? Is it through requiring or having some incentive program like the barking lot program that she had suggested? And there was a question that came up as far as where the fees from dog licenses go. And so I looked up the administrative code and I printed out a copy of what I found of just this section of basically section 10.123 establishes a fund to receive all licensing fees, and these funds are supposed to be used exclusively for operating ACC. And so I'm wondering, it seemed like there was an open question, and maybe Director Donohue can answer this. Are these funds coming to ACC, or do you think that these funds are going somewhere else, and should we follow up on that with the tax collector?
The funds go into the general fund. However, we receive way more funding than we get through licensing or any other fee. So we're funded around $7 million. The income from licensing and all other fees, I'd have to double check off the top of my head, it's around $400,000. So we would be in a world of hurt if we existed solely on those fees.
But if there was a program to increase the collection on those fees, that money would not likely go to you on top of what you're already getting.
Right, well, I don't know, probably not. I mean, I have been told in the past that if we increased it dramatically, that they would consider having a portion of the increase come to us. But one of my predecessors during the recession actively tried to, had a program to actively try and increase licensing. That they ultimately stopped because it was costing a lot of labor and not getting very good results. We have a new deputy director coming on board next month, and one of his assignments is to look into this whole licensing program. Right now there are as far as I know, 3 vendors. One is using our existing database, you know, paying for an enhanced version and us doing all the fee collection and all that ourselves, which frankly is not so attractive. There is a company in Texas that, you know, you outsource the whole thing to them. And Texas is one of the states that because of LGBTQ rights issues, we are not allowed to do business with. The third option is a Canadian company, which after you get to a certain level, takes 40% of the fees. So then the new deputy will have to sort of assess our options, figure out what makes sense. There are other jurisdictions, frankly, I believe they're in Texas, that are foregoing the licensing altogether. Just sort of making an assessment that the amount, you know, by the time you do all the labor and figure out the rabies expiration and collect the $25 fee that you've spent more than, and they are going for a one-time microchip program instead. But you know, there's a wide variety of options that you'll need to look at.
And the deputy director, kind of what is his timeline? And I know that it would
he hasn't even started working.
Right. I only asked because Supervisor Fear kind of wants action on this by the end of the year, and so I can tell her what's feasible.
Oh, sure. We can. Well, he's coming on board September 3rd. He's currently the director of Sonoma County, so we are hoping he is coming well prepared to do this job because, you know, he's done the top job for 4 years. So when he starts work, I'll tell him that's top priority things.
Thank you.
Supervisor Fewer's looking at the plan.
But just to clarify, when we're looking for potential long-term solutions, from your point of view, increased programs that result in increased numbers of dog licenses are not actually likely to generate more income than they cost you, even if those funds were to go directly back into ACC.
Right, we need to study it more, but yeah, it is not considered to be a great source of revenue, particularly over time as people, used to be the license was your ticket home, well now there's the microchip. So consumers are seeing less value in the license than they used to. But again, these are all issues that John will need to explore.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry, one more question, and I can follow up with your new deputy director too if you don't know the answers, but I guess you probably don't know if licensing could be streamlined such that the cost is lower than what it is now or what it brings in.
So that's the outsourcing option, which is DocuPet. They're a Canadian company, you know, because we're just going to forget. We looked at pet data for about 6 months before the whole thing worked out that they were headquartered in Texas, so we couldn't use them. So eliminate that assumption. So DocuPet's premise is different in that it tries to make the license more attractive by adding in coupons and gift cards and other things that makes the value of the license, it increases its perceived value. You pay your $25 fee and you get a $50 gift card at a local pet store. So you feel like you're actually, as the consumer, you feel like you're making money. So that's part of what they're going to need to look into. It used to be that the treasurer and tax collector also collected all the fees and processed all the paper and sent out the mailings, and that function just reverted to us in the last month because the treasurer and tax collector is saying, okay, we mail out the bills for your property tax. You know, on every bill that we send out, we're collecting, depending on the value of your house, a big chunk of change. For every letter we do for a license, everything is an exception because we have to check the rabies, we have to check the spay-neuter certificate, we have to check all these things, and we're doing all this to get $20. So the treasurer and tax collector has said, this is crazy, you know, we don't want to do this anymore.
Aside from the finances of it though, I mean, that's still our only way of enforcing rabies vaccination. Are you aware of any statistics that have been validated on how many animals are currently actually licensed versus the population and vaccinated as well?
Apparently Dr. O'Neill knows that.
I forwarded it to you. I just have the information that we sent to the public health folks for last year. So vaccinated and licensed dogs were 16,882. So that's total number, new, renewed, and continuing licensed in the city and county. And Director Donohue, in your experience, do you find that licenses are valuable, or do you think that microchipping may just be the better option?
Well, in terms of getting your pet back, you know, I'm a belt and suspenders gal, like do it all. But there is an issue nationwide with license rates being well below 20% in most jurisdictions. And license fees being very, very low. You know, I think our altered fee is something like $26. DocuPet advocates, we have a 1-year and a 3-year license, and DocuPet advocates making everybody an annual license, since they feel that getting that annual touch really encourages the relationship and it becomes something you do every year. Whereas if you're getting a 3-year license and you don't hear from the city within, you know, for 3 years, you've moved, you've forgotten, you haven't, you know, it doesn't become ingrained in your head as something you need to do. That's based on their market research.
And with the past numbers, we still recognize from your data that we have about 120,000 animals or dogs in the city?
Well, that's based on the AVMA model. So their model is based, it's a pet calculator, so you put in your population size and it spits out the number. So we're supposed to have 120,000 dogs. I think we're also supposed to have like 400 horses or something. I'm pretty sure we don't. Just guessing, but don't. So it's a kind of a crude measure. I'm not gonna say it's wrong, because I don't actually have a better number. So we go with theirs, but I'm hesitant to tell you that that's a solid number.
Do you think that raising the cost or the price of licenses would be prohibitive? I mean, do you think it's a good idea or not?
I think that's something John needs to look at. I think he needs to look at what other places across the country have done. And, you know, is it, if you go high, do you get people panicked and complying because they don't want the late fee? If you go low, do people just say, oh, okay, we'll do it? I mean, there's a wide school of thought on that, and I think that's something he's gonna have to look at.
Maybe it'll be possible for us to have him come in. I know he's probably gonna be very busy, but maybe in October or November. We can have him
Probably, yeah, October, November.
Come in and just give us an overview of what's going on
Yeah, I
regarding this.
think, yeah, absolutely. He has a vacation planned in the fall, and I just don't, you know, pre-planned prior to accepting the job. And I know it's in October. I don't know if it conflicts with your meeting, but yeah, certainly we can bring that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
If that might be the best, that way we can get an update and then we can pass on to the supervisor and see what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Any commissioner questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, any public comments regarding this very issue and this issue alone, please?
Hi, my name is Michael Angelo Torres, and I'm a San Francisco resident. The reason why I wanted to talk, I've been to various commission meetings before I've ever spoken, but I am pretty interested in the dog licensing issue just because I've had problems with it in the past. During the last 10 years, I probably have adopted, well, actually 7 dogs. 6 of them have been from a rescue in San Francisco. The other one was from a rescue in Richmond, California. All these dogs are senior dogs. Many of them are hospice dogs. And so they've all come to me with various medical ailments. Unfortunately, some of the rescues don't always provide all the paperwork you need in which to get licenses. A good example is with one of my very first ones, about 10 years ago. I wasn't able to provide the exact date in which my dog was neutered. Now, I have a certificate from the doctor, from the vet, and also the rescue saying they've been neutered, but there wasn't an exact date. When I contacted the tax collector about it, I was told, oh, you need an exact date. So I just kind of said, okay, you know whatever. Another problem I've had as well is that with some of the dogs, they have medical issues. And with these medical issues, they have been advised by vets, or as we've heard earlier before, people with lots of letters and degrees behind their name, and they've been advised not to get any rabies shots. As a result of not doing that, again, they can't get licenses. And then the final problem I've had a lot of times too is, again, going back to some of the rescues that all of us don't always provide information, you have information from vet visits, and of course some of these dogs have been rescued in other cities, other states, and they eventually worked their way to a Bay Area rescue, and that's when I adopted these animals. You see that there is reference, and there's even medical information concerning rabies shots and when the dates are, but you don't have that certificate. You don't have that number, and without that number, again, you can't get a license. So, you know, and one last thing, many of the dogs have passed away, and I still repeatedly, even though I told the tax collector, the dog is gone, you know, they passed away, you know, I still get renewals year after year. So I also wonder if that also has an impact too in some of the numbers you're seeing. So again, just wanted to point that out, that sometimes it's not always an issue of guardians not stepping up to the plate, it's also the fact that things aren't made easy. And I understand that there's guidelines that everyone has to follow, but there's just some that are just a little ridiculous. And so hopefully these can be addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sally Stevens, SF Dog. A couple of points. I think, I don't know if this is considered a fee, the dog license, but I think in the city, fees can't be more than the cost of administering them. So you may not be able to just arbitrarily set a dog license fee, assuming that it falls under that criteria. And I'm still confused, does the money go into the city's general fund, which is, you know, funds everything in the city, or does it go into a general fund for animal care and control? That would be two different things. And in the past, there was issues about if there was concern if...
city fund, apparently.
It's just the city general fund. That's what I thought, yeah. So your license fee could be funding pothole repairs, basically.
And that's probably why, sorry to interrupt, that's probably
Exactly.
why it wouldn't go up, the city told you it wouldn't go up if it did fees.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it could be some of that. And in the past, I know, I think people were concerned that if ACC got increased amount of money from the license fees, that the city would say, oh, if you get, you know, say discussion, $20,000 more in license fees, you therefore need $20,000 less from our budget that we allot you because you're getting it from that. So there's always a little bit of concern that it wouldn't be on top of anything, but it might actually decrease the amount of money that the city gets, that ACC gets from their budget. Again, that's kind of the will of the board could make a decision and say, thou shalt not do that. And then I think that veterinarians are a great source of, they're the ones that are giving the rabies vaccines, if you could do it at the same time. I know a lot of vets don't want to do that because it's an added burden, and I get that. But that is a kind of an issue that, how that works, I don't know. But I think that, and the point is that it's nationally, people don't license their dogs. And all the issues that the gentleman just spoke are legitimate ones that need to be addressed in some way or another. And just to reiterate, SF Dog would love to work with you guys on any programs that you come up with, or anything about with the supervisor, if she has some legislation that might earmark this money for something specific that wouldn't therefore cost ACC and another, do the others like that. We're more than happy to work with you guys on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other?
Okay, my name is Richard Schaefer. I don't have a dog. My issue deals with lost dogs. I work with, originally was with Pets and Pals, and the two dogs were lost with an organization called Contact, called AHAM in San Francisco. Okay, so the issue is the dog a dog was adopted to somebody, we were brought in to help find the dog because the person was walking the dog, never had had one before. It got freaked out and it ran away from him. And all we had was a photograph of the dog. And the dog never was found again. And in the other case, the dog came through San Francisco from Taiwan, so it's some kind of breed from over there that looks like a Labrador here. It was picked up at the airport here and driven to San Jose, and it was just about to be transferred in San Jose to a shelter there, and it jumped out of the carrier and ran across the street, across the freeway. No one could follow it. Eventually, the dog got found 20 miles away by an animal shelter. So what would have worked for us, which would require some help on the part of the city, which in terms of our discussion tonight, it'd be like, I'd like to have the option of putting a GPS collar on the dog. It's an option. And at the time of licensing, the idea of paying some more money for that feature because, let's say, the city has set up GPS tracking stations in the city parks, not all over the city. So if a dog turns up in that vicinity, at least you know that the dog's there. So if I'm looking for a dog that's run away, I know that there are certain places the dog might automatically be found. And that would help us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other commissioner comments?
I would just say if we're going to have any type of comment as a commission, I think all agree that when we're dealing with controlling rabies and the licensing being our main mechanism for that, that regardless of the finances, we shouldn't have a situation where animal control loses funds or is penalized essentially financially for trying to get higher numbers of compliance with or without licensing, just in terms of keeping dogs rabies vaccinated.
Yeah, I think everyone's in agreement with that. Is there any other commissioner comments? Do we want to kind of, I guess, put this on hold for a minute until we can hear from the new deputy director and see where things are moving forward with there?
Yeah,
Do that before the end of the year and then keep the supervisor up to date with what she was, kind of her timeline too.
Mm-hmm. I'll do that.
Okay. Cool. I guess we'll move on to 5C, our Commissioner Technology Update, our ever fun-loving thing. This is an action item from Commissioner Portier, who is not here, but I believe Jane has an update. An update on Commissioner's effort to update the webpage. Did you have something to say, Jane?
There was a letter that was sent last couple of weeks ago to the clerk's office and to the board, into city administrator as well. And today I went in to put the audio files on. None of us on this commission have a PC. So silly and stupid. And I even went to the library to try to upload these audio files. It's a last-ditch effort, and you have to download a zip file, which you're locked out of doing from the library. So today I went down to beg for help from the sfgov.tv IT group and asked them to help me get these audio files uploaded. And while it was uploading our 9.5 hours worth of audio, we've had some pretty long meetings, I went up to the clerk's office, who acknowledged that the letter was sent, and they said, no one's contacted you? Okay, so here's what you need to do. We need to get a Board of Supervisor member to sponsor a change in our original charter language, and it gave me sample language, because we were formed in 1990, before there was online you know, website updates. This is so boring to me, I'm so sorry, but we were formed before that, so we didn't have the language in there for administrative support of this kind of technology. So we can amend that language, but we need a board of supervisor to supervise, or to sponsor that. And then, once that gets changed, we need an administrator. And the administrator will be from one of the following departments likely. Either the city administrator, animal care and control, public health department. We originated out of the public health department. We don't know anybody there. So I sent a letter to Naomi Kelly today, or an email, asking for her support if that language gets changed to be an administrator to allow us to give documentation so that we can upload. That's where we are. We can do ad hoc, ask favors, get things uploaded like the letter that we need to do, the original letter to the Board of Supervisors, but we're begging people to do it for us now because of our technology limitations that are silly.
It's silly. I happened to have a meeting with Naomi today, and she mentioned your letter, and she said to tell you she's investigating options.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, so progress is being made. Good, good, good. Okay, and then we just need to get a board of supervisor to sponsor the change in the language, the amended language to that.
Maybe Bill Barnes. Do you know Bill Barnes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so he has some ideas on that.
Okay.
So maybe talk to Bill next week. I know I'm not working on it.
Yeah, I've gotten
But,
it,
like,
they've done
yeah.
it in the clerks, there's a simple line that gets added.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's,
Yeah, Bill has some thoughts, because apparently this is not the only commission that has a similar problem.
That's why we have a sample language from other commissions that have done it. Yeah.
Who is Bill Barnes?
He is he with the mayor's office or?
No, he's in Naomi Kelly's office.
Okay.
He's in her office, and there's apparently another commission with a similar issue.
Did you want to reach out to him?
Sure.
Okay.
That's my follow-up. I will reach out to Bill
Okay.
Barnes
And as you said, both you and I will make a point when, on the 9th, when we speak for the Rules Committee to bring this subject up before that. We are out here on our own. Lost orphan children. Great, thanks for the update, and thank you, Virginia, for giving us a little update as well. Any other commissioner comments? Is there any public comment regarding our technology issues? Seeing none, I guess we will move on to general public comment. Members of the public may address the commission with comments or recommendations on items within the commission's jurisdiction, other than the items on the agenda at the beginning or at the end of the meeting, but not both. Is there any random additional public comments? Seeing none, I guess we will move on. Are there any agenda items that we need to add to next month's meeting? Sure. I guess maybe just the kind of follow-up from.
Russell, if next month's meeting is wide open, maybe we can bring the tethering issue back up briefly.
We can, yeah. I mean, obviously, there's definitely the ask for agenda items will be sent around, so we can certainly add things when we want to. This is just part of our meeting, so I'm just wondering if anything we don't. Are there things we need to follow up from this meeting? I guess we'll just get the updates going forward. Any technology updates will go on. Okay. Anything else other than that? I guess we will call for an adjournment.
To adjourn.
Seconded. Thanks so much. You.